The screenshot I took during that Zoom call with investors lasted exactly 2 seconds. 2 seconds to capture the image that would end my boss's career, expose 2 years of systematic theft, destroy a reputation built entirely on lies, and prove that sometimes the evidence you need is literally hanging on the wall behind someone visible to anyone paying attention. My name is Marcus Rivera. I'm a graphic designer. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent the past 12 years working in advertising and marketing across 3 different agencies in 2 states. For the past 3 years, I'd been the senior designer at Apex Creative, a mid-sized agency in Denver, Colorado. We handled branding, campaigns, and visual identity work for clients, ranging from local Colorado businesses to national brands with 8-figure marketing budgets. I was good at my job. Actually, I was excellent at my job. My concepts won competitive pitches against agencies 3 times our size. My designs drove measurable results, increased engagement, higher conversion rates, stronger brand recognition. Clients specifically requested to work with me by name, which was rare for someone at my level. But for 2 years, someone else had been taking credit for every successful campaign I'd created, every innovative concept I'd developed, every award-winning design that had come from my brain and my hands. His name was Derek Walsh. He was my boss, the creative director at Apex Creative, and he was a systematic, calculated thief. This is the story of how one careless mistake during a Zoom call exposed everything Derek had stolen. How a single screenshot became undeniable proof of intellectual property theft spanning dozens of projects and hundreds of thousands of dollars. How patience, documentation, and perfect timing destroyed a career built entirely on other people's creativity. But to understand why that screenshot was so devastating, why it represented the culmination of 2 years of quiet rage and meticulous record keeping, I need to go back to the beginning. Not just to where Derek's theft started, but to why creative work matters so much to me in the first place. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Aurora, just outside Denver. My parents were both immigrants from Mexico. My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. Neither of them had gone to college. Neither of them worked in jobs that required creativity or imagination. But they understood beauty. They valued it. My mother would spend hours arranging our small apartment to make it feel welcoming. She'd find discarded furniture on the street, refinish it, and turn it into something beautiful. My father would build things, shelves, tables, small repairs with a level of craftsmanship that went beyond functional. He'd sand and stain and polish until even a simple bookshelf looked like art. They saw creativity as something precious, something that elevated life beyond just survival. When I showed an interest in drawing as a kid, they encouraged it, bought me sketchbooks and pencils even when money was tight, praised my work even when it was childish and rough, told me that making beautiful things was a gift. I fell in love with design in high school, specifically graphic design, the way typography could convey emotion, the way color palettes could evoke specific feelings, the way a well-designed logo could communicate an entire brand identity in a single glance. I went to community college first. It was what we could afford, then transferred to the University of Colorado, Denver for my final 2 years, graduated with a degree in graphic design and $30,000 in student loan debt. My first job was at a small agency in Denver, doing mostly local business work, restaurant menus, real estate brochures, small-time stuff. But I learned the fundamentals, how to work with clients, how to translate abstract ideas into concrete visual solutions, how to meet deadlines and manage revisions. After 2 years, I moved to a larger agency in Portland, Oregon. Bigger clients, more complex projects. I spent 5 years there building my skills and my portfolio, won some regional awards, started getting noticed in the industry. Then I got recruited back to Denver by Apex Creative. They offered me a senior designer position with a significant raise. The creative director at the time, a woman named Janet Holloway, had seen my portfolio and specifically wanted me on her team. I accepted, moved back to Denver, started at Apex in March of 2022. For the first year, everything was good, great even. Janet was an excellent creative director. She gave clear direction but also trusted her designers to bring their own vision to projects. She credited people's work appropriately. When we won a pitch, she'd specifically mention who'd developed the concepts. I thrived under her leadership, produced some of the best work of my career. Then Janet left. She'd been recruited by a major agency in New York. A huge opportunity. We all understood why she was going. even though we were sad to see her leave. Apex promoted from within to replace her. Derek Walsh, who'd been the associate creative director, was elevated to creative director in February of 2023. I didn't know Derek well. He'd been at Apex for about 5 years, but we'd worked on different client accounts. He seemed competent, professional. The leadership team spoke highly of him. His promotion seemed like a logical choice. I had no idea what kind of person he actually was. The first sign came about 3 weeks after Derek became creative director. We'd been assigned a rebranding pitch for a regional outdoor recreation company called Summit Trail. They made hiking gear, camping equipment, outdoor apparel, good quality stuff, but their brand identity felt dated. They wanted something fresh that would appeal to younger outdoor enthusiasts. Derek called me into his office, the same office Janet had occupied. He'd already redecorated, removed Janet's personal touches, and replaced them with a more masculine corporate aesthetic. Everything was gray and chrome and minimalist. He said he wanted me to lead the creative development for Summit Trail, that this was a significant opportunity, that the client had a healthy budget, and winning this pitch could really elevate Apex's profile in the outdoor recreation space. I was excited. This was exactly the kind of project I loved, a complete rebrand where I could develop a comprehensive visual identity from the ground up. Derek gave me the creative brief, said he trusted my vision, that I should run with it, and show him what I came up with. I spent the next 3 weeks completely immersed in Summit Trail. I researched their target demographic, read forums where outdoor enthusiasts discussed gear and brands, looked at their competitors' visual identities, studied photography from actual hiking trails and wilderness areas to understand the aesthetic their customers valued. I conducted informal interviews with friends who were serious hikers and climbers, asked them what brands resonated with them and why, what made outdoor gear advertising feel authentic versus manufactured. What I learned was that the outdoor recreation community valued authenticity above everything else. They could spot fake adventure marketing immediately. They wanted brands that understood the actual experience of being in wilderness, the discomfort and difficulty and moments of transcendent beauty, not Instagram-filtered fantasy adventures. I built my entire concept around that insight: authentic wilderness experiences. The tagline I developed was "No filters," a play on both photography filters and the idea of unfiltered, raw outdoor experiences. The visual language I created reflected that authenticity, hand-drawn typography that felt organic and imperfect. A color palette pulled directly from trail photography, the deep green of pine forests, the gold of aspen groves in fall, the blue of alpine lakes at high altitude, the gray-brown of weathered granite. I created textures that evoked natural materials: tree bark, weathered wood, river-smoothed stone. Everything felt tactile and real rather than slick and corporate. I designed dozens of preliminary sketches, logo iterations, typography studies, pattern explorations, all hand-drawn first, then refined digitally. I built comprehensive mood boards showing how the brand identity would work across different applications: packaging design, website interface, social media templates, retail display concepts, vehicle wraps for their delivery trucks. I created a full campaign concept for their spring product launch, real photography of actual hikers on Colorado trails, honest copy that acknowledged the difficulty of outdoor experiences while celebrating the rewards, social media strategy built around user-generated content from their actual customers. It was some of the most thorough, thoughtful work I'd ever done. I was genuinely proud of it. I presented everything to Derek in his office on a Thursday afternoon, walked him through each element of the rebrand, explained the strategic thinking behind every design choice, showed him how all the pieces work together as a cohesive brand identity. Derek looked through the materials, nodded occasionally, asked a few surface-level questions. Then he said, "This is solid work, Marcus, really solid. Let me think about how to position this for the client presentation. I'll take it from here." I asked if he wanted me to refine anything, if there were directions he wanted me to explore further. He said no, that what I developed was exactly what he needed, that he'd handle the client presentation himself. I left his office feeling good, accomplished, ready to see my work presented to the client. The pitch was scheduled for the following Friday, a conference room presentation at Summit Trail's headquarters in Boulder. I assumed I'd be part of the presentation team. That's how it had worked, Under Janet's leadership, the designer who developed the concepts would present alongside the creative director. But when Friday came, Derek told me the client wanted to keep the presentation team small. Just him and Patricia Gordon, our CEO. Too many people in the room could be overwhelming. I was disappointed but tried to understand. Maybe this client preferred a more intimate presentation style. The pitch happened. I wasn't there. Derek came back that afternoon and announced to the team that Summit Trail had loved everything. They'd signed the contract on the spot. Six-figure deal. Huge win for Apex. Everyone celebrated. People congratulated Derek on his creative vision, on his strategic thinking. He accepted the praise, gave a little speech about the importance of understanding your client's authentic needs, about creating work that resonated emotionally, not just visually. All the language I'd used when explaining my concepts to him. He didn't mention my name once. Not once. I told myself it wasn't personal, that this was just how agency culture worked. The creative director presented the work and got the public credit. That was the hierarchy. But it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. A week later, Patricia Gordon sent a company-wide email announcing Derek's promotion to Vice President of Creative. The email specifically cited the Summit Trail win as evidence of his exceptional creative leadership and innovative thinking. Again, no mention of my work. I started paying closer attention after that, watching how Derek operated, observing the pattern. What I noticed was this. Derek would assign me to develop concepts for major client pitches. I'd do all the creative heavy lifting, the research, the ideation, the design development. I'd present my completed work to Derek privately in his office. Derek would give minimal feedback, usually just, "This looks great," or "Solid work." He'd tell me he'd take it from there. Then he'd present my work to clients as if it were his own creative vision. He'd use language like my concept and my design approach. He'd discuss his creative process, his inspiration, his strategic insights. All of it was mine, but he presented it as his. And it worked. Clients loved the work, contracts got signed, Derek's reputation as a creative genius grew. Meanwhile, I stayed invisible. The talented designer who executed Derek's brilliant ideas. The skilled technician who brought his vision to life. Except none of the vision was his, all of it was mine. I tried to rationalize it, told myself this was how agencies operated, that junior people did the work, and senior people took the credit, that this was paying your dues, that eventually I'd move up and get my own recognition. But I wasn't junior. I had 12 years of experience. I was a senior designer. I'd been promised that the next step was associate creative director. Derek had mentioned that promotion several times, said I was on track for it, that it was just a matter of timing, budget approvals, organizational planning. But months passed. The promotion never came. Instead, in August of 2023, Derek hired an associate creative director from outside the agency. His name was Brad something. I don't even remember his last name. He was young, maybe 28. He'd worked at one other agency in Phoenix. His portfolio was fine, but not exceptional. He had no major client wins, no awards, no track record of innovative work, but he was Derek's hire, and Derek gave him the position I'd been promised. When I asked Derek about it, carefully, professionally, he said the decision had come from above him, that the leadership team wanted to bring in fresh perspective, that I should focus on continuing to produce excellent work, that my time would come. I started to understand that my time would never come, not while Derek was stealing my work and using it to advance his own career. Over the next year, the pattern continued and intensified. Derek assigned me to develop the rebrand for Cascade Coffee, a regional chain expanding into Colorado. I created a complete visual identity built around the Pacific Northwest heritage of their brand. Evergreen color palette, hand-lettered typography, imagery celebrating coffee culture and craftsmanship. Derek presented it to the client, took full credit. They signed a $75,000 contract. He assigned me to create a campaign for RedLine Fitness, a boutique gym chain. I developed a concept called Strength in Progress that celebrated the journey of fitness rather than just the destination. Real photography of actual members at various stages of their fitness journeys. Inclusive imagery showing people of different ages, body types, abilities. Derek presented it, took credit, 8-location gym chain, substantial ongoing marketing contract. He assigned me to rebrand Summit Medical, a network of urgent care clinics. I created an identity that balanced professionalism with approachability. Clean, modern design that felt trustworthy but not sterile. Warm color palette, photography showing real healthcare providers with real patients. Derek presented it, took credit. Another six-figure contract. Project after project, month after month. All my work, all Derek's credit. I kept detailed documentation of everything, saved all my original files with timestamps showing when they were created, kept every email where Derek assigned me projects, photographed my preliminary sketches and development work. I created a private folder on my personal laptop, organizing everything by project, initial client briefs, my creative development materials, final presentations, signed contracts. I also started talking quietly with other designers at the agency. That's when I learned I wasn't the only one Derek had stolen from. Amanda Torres had been a mid-level designer at Apex until she'd left abruptly in April of 2023. I'd wondered why she'd left. She'd seemed happy there. I reached out to her through LinkedIn, asked if she'd be willing to meet for coffee. We met on a Saturday morning at a cafe in Capitol Hill. Amanda was hesitant at first, clearly wondering why I'd contacted her. When I told her what was happening to me, Derek taking credit for my work, blocking my advancement, her expression changed completely. She said he did the exact same thing to me. Amanda told me Derek had assigned her to develop creative concepts for multiple projects during her time at Apex. She'd created campaign strategies, visual identities, comprehensive design systems. Derek had presented all of it as his own work. When Amanda tried to speak up, when she mentioned to colleagues that she'd developed the concepts Derek was taking credit for, he'd retaliated. Suddenly, her work was never good enough. Derek started criticizing everything she produced, started excluding her from important projects, started creating a paper trail suggesting she had performance issues. Amanda had filed an HR complaint, said that Derek was taking credit for her work and retaliating against her for speaking up about it. The HR investigation had been cursory at best. They'd asked Derek if the allegations were true. He'd denied everything, said Amanda was a disgruntled employee who was upset about not getting promoted, that her work had genuine quality issues. HR concluded there was insufficient evidence to support Amanda's claims. The hostile environment continued. Amanda eventually felt she had no choice but to leave. She'd found another position at a different agency, was doing well there now, but she still felt angry about what had happened, still felt like she'd been driven out for telling the truth. I asked Amanda if she had any documentation from her time at Apex, any evidence of the work she'd created. She did. She'd kept copies of her original files, emails, notes from meetings with Derek where he'd assigned her projects. She said she'd always wondered if it would matter someday, if anyone would care. I told her it mattered, that I cared, that I was building a case against Derek and her testimony would be valuable. Amanda agreed to help, said she'd felt guilty about staying silent after she left. Like maybe if she'd fought harder, Derek wouldn't be doing this to someone else. To me, I told her it wasn't her fault, that the system had failed her, that HR had failed her, but that together maybe we could finally hold Derek accountable. I also connected with Jake Morrison, another designer still at Apex. Jake was younger, maybe 26, and he was struggling with the same thing I was. Derek had stolen credit for Jake's work on multiple smaller projects. Jake had figured out the pattern but felt powerless to stop it. He told me he'd considered quitting, but he needed the job, needed the paycheck. Felt like speaking up would just get him fired or blacklisted. So he stayed quiet, kept his head down, let Derek steal his work because the alternative seemed worse. The culture of silence at Apex was pervasive. Everyone knew what Derek was doing. No one talked about it openly. Certainly no one reported it. The designers were afraid of retaliation. The account managers didn't want to rock the boat as long as clients were happy. The leadership team loved Derek because he kept winning pitches and bringing in revenue. No one wanted to confront the reality that Derek's success was built on theft. I realized that documentation alone wouldn't be enough to expose him. Even with all my files and timestamps and emails, it would still be my word against his. Derek would claim we collaborated, that he provided strategic direction and I executed his vision, that this was all a misunderstanding from a disgruntled employee who felt entitled to credit that wasn't deserved. He'd position himself as the victim of a smear campaign, the successful creative leader being attacked by someone jealous of his achievements. Without something more concrete, something absolutely undeniable, Derek would survive any accusation I made. I needed irrefutable proof, photographic evidence, something that couldn't be explained away or recontextualized. I just didn't know what that would be. So I kept working, kept documenting, kept waiting for an opportunity. That opportunity came in a way I never could have anticipated. March of 2024. The COVID pandemic had been officially over for a year, but many companies had stayed partially or fully remote. Apex Creative had gone fully remote in March of 2020 and had never gone back to the office. Our entire operation ran on Zoom now. Client meetings, team meetings, pitch presentations, creative reviews, everything virtual. I'd set up a home office in my one-bedroom apartment in the Baker neighborhood of Denver, bought a good webcam, got a decent microphone, made sure my background looked professional, bookshelf with design books, a few tasteful prints on the wall. Derek had also gone remote, working from his house in Highlands Ranch, an affluent suburb south of Denver. He'd bought the house a year earlier, a nice place with a home office, funded in part by bonuses he'd received for work I'd created. Remote work changed some dynamics at the agency. It was harder for Derek to control information as tightly, harder to have whispered conversations where he'd claim my ideas before presenting them to clients. But he adapted quickly. He'd schedule one-on-one Zoom calls with me where I'd present my creative concepts. He'd provide minimal feedback, usually just, "This looks great, exactly what we need." Then he'd schedule separate Zoom calls with clients where he'd present the work as his own creative vision, using all the language and strategic insights I'd provided him. The theft continued, just virtually now. In November of 2024, we pitched a major campaign for a financial services company called Sterling Investments. Sterling was a mid-sized wealth management firm based in Denver. They wanted a complete rebrand, targeting younger investors, millennials, and Gen Z who were skeptical of traditional financial institutions. Their existing brand was exactly what you'd expect from a financial services company: conservative, boring, intimidating, navy blue and gray, formal serif typography, stock photography of executives in suits shaking hands. They wanted something completely different. Something that would make investing feel accessible and understandable to younger people who'd grown up watching their parents struggle through the Great Recession. Derek assigned me to lead the creative development, said this was a massive opportunity, that Sterling had a substantial budget, and winning this pitch could fundamentally change Apex's positioning in the financial services space. I spent 6 weeks developing the concept. The strategic foundation I built was around financial transparency and accessibility. The idea that investing shouldn't feel exclusive or complicated, that financial security should be achievable for everyone, not just wealthy older people. The visual language I created reflected that approachability. I used modern sans serif typography that felt clean and contemporary but not cold. A color palette of deep navy blue, maintaining enough traditional financial credibility, balanced with vibrant green, suggesting growth and possibility. I developed an icon system that took complex financial concepts, diversification, compound interest, risk management, and made them visually simple and understandable. I designed comprehensive mock-ups for Sterling's entire digital presence, their app interface, their website, their social media presence, everything built around the idea of making financial information clear and accessible. I created a full campaign concept with messaging built around real financial scenarios young people faced: student loan debt, first home purchases, starting to invest with small amounts, all addressed with honesty and without condescension. It was sophisticated work, strategic, thoughtful, some of the best I'd ever done. I presented everything to Derek in early December on a Zoom call, walked him through every element, explained the strategic thinking, showed him how all the components work together as a cohesive brand identity. Derek's reaction was the same as always. "This is excellent, Marcus. Really excellent work. Let me think about how to position this with the client. I'll take it from here." The pitch with Sterling Investments was scheduled for December 15th, a Tuesday afternoon. A Zoom call with Sterling's executive team and marketing leadership. I wasn't invited. Derek said they wanted to keep the presentation intimate, just him and Patricia Gordon, our CEO. That having too many people on the call could be distracting. I understood what that meant. I'd done my job. created the work. Now Derek would present it as his own and take all the credit. The familiar anger and frustration washed over me, but I pushed it down, stayed professional, said I understood. The pitch happened on Tuesday, December 15th, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. I could see it on Derek's calendar. Sterling Investments, brand pitch and proposal. I tried to focus on other work, couldn't. I kept thinking about Derek in his home office, presenting my concepts, my strategy, my designs, all of it framed as his creative vision, his innovative thinking. Around 4:30, Derek posted in our team Slack channel, "Sterling pitch went phenomenally well. They loved the creative direction. Contracts being drawn up now. Huge win for Apex." The congratulations poured in immediately. People praising Derek's creative leadership, his strategic brilliance, his ability to understand client needs. Not a single person mentioned my name. I closed Slack, sat at my desk staring at nothing, feeling the weight of 2 years of theft settling onto my shoulders. That evening, I received an email from Patricia Gordon. Subject line, "Quick call tomorrow?" My stomach dropped. Was I being fired? Had Derek complained about me? What was this about? I barely slept that night. Ran through every possible scenario in my mind. The next morning at 9, I logged into a Zoom call with Patricia. She was smiling, which confused me. "Marcus, I wanted to talk to you about the Sterling pitch. Derek did an absolutely phenomenal job presenting yesterday." My heart sank. Patricia continued, "The clients were incredibly impressed with the creative vision. They specifically commented on how fresh and innovative the approach was, how it completely reimagined what financial services branding could be. Derek really knocked it out of the park." I nodded, forced myself to smile, didn't trust myself to speak. "We're going to be making some organizational changes in the new year," Patricia said. "Derek is getting a significant raise and expanded responsibilities. He'll be overseeing all creative output for the agency now, all departments, all client accounts. I wanted you to know because you'll be reporting directly to him on every project going forward." She paused. "Derek specifically asked me to let you know that he appreciates your execution capabilities, that you're an important part of the creative team." My execution capabilities.
The work was mine, the strategy was mine, the creative vision was mine.
But all I was to Derek, to Patricia, to everyone, was someone who executed his brilliant ideas. I managed to thank Patricia for the information, to say I was excited about the agency's growth, to end the call professionally. Then I sat at my desk for 20 minutes, not moving, feeling the full magnitude of what had just happened.
Derek was being promoted, being given more power, more authority, more opportunity to continue stealing.
And I was being positioned even more firmly under his control. My contributions reduced to execution capabilities. I could quit. I probably should quit. This situation was unbearable and getting worse. But quitting felt like surrender, like validating that this kind of theft was just how creative industries operated, like abandoning every other designer Derek would steal from in the future. I opened my documentation folder, looked at the files, the timestamps, the emails, the preliminary sketches, everything I'd meticulously saved over 2 years. It still wasn't enough not to expose Derek in a way that would actually matter. I needed something undeniable, something photographic, something that couldn't be explained away as a misunderstanding or a disgruntled employee's bitter accusations. I had no idea what that would be. I just knew I wasn't done fighting. 2 weeks passed. The holidays came and went. New Year arrived. January 8th, 2025, a Thursday. Sterling Investments scheduled a follow-up call. They'd signed the contract $300,000 for the complete rebrand and 6 months of ongoing campaign work. Now they wanted to discuss implementation details, timeline, deliverables, technical specifications. The call was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This time, I was invited. Derek wanted me on the call to answer technical questions about the designs. He'd handle strategy and big picture discussion. I'd handle the execution details. Fine, I could do that. One more performance of my assigned role. The day of the call, I logged into Zoom at 1:58, 2 minutes early, as always. The Sterling team joined right at 2, 5 people, Christina Valdez, their CMO, Robert Park, their VP of Marketing, and 3 directors from different departments whose names I didn't catch. Derek joined 30 seconds late. His video clicked on and I saw his home office. It was a background I'd seen dozens of times over the past year of remote work. The same view I'd watched during countless team meetings and client calls and creative reviews. His desk with two large monitors, bookshelves on the left side of the frame filled with design books and business strategy books, a window on the right showing his backyard, a few framed prints on the wall behind him, mostly abstract art, nothing personal. The usual professional home office setup. The call started. Derek began with pleasantries, thanked the Sterling team for their partnership, expressed how excited Apex was to be working with them. Then he launched into discussion of the brand implementation, started talking about his creative vision for their rebrand, his strategic approach, his insights into what would resonate with their target demographic. I'd heard this performance before many times. My work described as his ideas, my strategy presented as his thinking. I was half listening, looking at my notes about timeline and technical specifications, when movement on Derek's video feed caught my attention. He'd stood up, reached for something on the bookshelf, a book, I think, to reference something he was discussing. As he stood, the camera angle shifted, the view of his office changed. What had been just bookshelves and framed prints suddenly showed more of the wall to the left of his desk. And there, pinned to that wall, were sketches. My sketches. My heart stopped. I leaned closer to my screen, squinted, tried to see more clearly. They were concept sketches from the Sterling campaign. Preliminary work. The hand-drawn typography studies I'd created before refining everything digitally. Logo iterations. Rough layouts. Derek had them pinned to his wall, like a mood board, like inspiration, like they were his work. My pulse was pounding in my ears. Derek was still talking. The Sterling team was listening. No one else had noticed what I was seeing. Derek reached the book he wanted, started to sit back down. I had maybe 3 seconds before the camera angle shifted back, and the sketches disappeared from view. My hand moved to my keyboard, pressed the screenshot button. The image captured. Derek sat back down. The camera angle returned to its normal view. The sketches disappeared from frame. But I had the screenshot. I minimized the zoom window immediately, opened the image file. My hands were shaking. There they were, clear as day, my preliminary sketches for Sterling Investments, pinned to Derek Walsh's home office wall while he presented the work to the client as his own creative vision. I zoomed into the image, enhanced the resolution as much as I could. The sketches were clearly visible, the hand-drawn typography, the logo iterations, the rough layout concepts. And there, in the bottom right corner of one of the sketches, barely visible but definitely there, my signature. I always signed my preliminary work. It was a habit from art school, a way of marking the work as mine even in the rough stages. Usually those signatures disappeared when I refined concepts digitally, but on the hand-drawn preliminary sketches, they were there. And one of those sketches was pinned to Derek Walsh's wall, with my signature visible, while he told the Sterling team about my creative process and my design approach. Photographic proof. Undeniable. Irrefutable. Impossible to explain away. I had him. The rest of that Zoom call passed in a complete blur. I heard myself answering questions from the Sterling team about technical specifications, timeline details, file formats, and asset delivery schedules. My voice sounded normal, professional, engaged, but my mind was elsewhere, racing, processing what I'd just discovered and what it meant. Derek Walsh had my original sketches, preliminary work I'd created months before his pitch to Sterling, displayed on his wall, visible during a client call where he was presenting that work as his own creative vision. And I had photographic proof, a screenshot with a timestamp, undeniable evidence that Derek had my signed work in his possession while claiming credit for creating it. The call ended. Everyone said their professional goodbyes. The Zoom window closed. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the screenshot, feeling a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't quite untangle. Rage. At Derek for the theft, for the systematic lying, for 2 years of stealing credit for my work. Vindication. Because I finally had proof. Real, concrete, photographic proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Fear. Because I was about to do something that would fundamentally change everything, that would destroy Derek's career, that could backfire spectacularly if I handled it wrong. And underneath it all, a deep bone-tired exhaustion from 2 years of documentation, from staying professional while being systematically erased, from the emotional labor of watching someone else get praised for work that came from my brain and my hands. I saved this screenshot in multiple locations: my laptop, external hard drive, cloud storage, emailed it to my personal account. Then I opened the documentation folder I'd been building for 2 years. I needed to make a decision: what to do with this evidence, how to use it, when to deploy it. I could go to Patricia Gordon immediately, show her the screenshot, demand an investigation, but I'd learned to think strategically, to consider timing and positioning and how people would react. Derek had just secured a $300,000 contract, had just been promoted to oversee all creative work at the agency, was riding high on what everyone believed was his brilliant creative leadership. If I exposed him now in the immediate aftermath of that success, the agency would panic. They'd be in crisis mode. Their instinct would be to protect the Sterling relationship above everything else. They might bury my complaint, might offer Derek a chance to resign quietly, might prioritize damage control over actual accountability. I needed to wait, to let Derek feel secure, to let the Sterling contract move past the initial signing phase into actual implementation. Then, when everything felt stable and Derek's position felt unassailable, I'd show everyone exactly who had created the work they were celebrating. So I waited. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, watching Derek get praised, watching him accept congratulations for my work, watching him perform the role of creative genius while I stayed silent. But I'd learned patience over 2 years of documentation. I could wait a little longer. I spent that waiting period building my case into something comprehensive and irrefutable. I went back through every major project Derek had stolen from me over the past 2 years. Not just the recent ones. All of them. Summit Trail, Cascade Coffee, RedLine Fitness, Summit Medical, Sterling Investments. For each project, I compiled the initial assignment, Derek's email asking me to develop creative concepts, date stamped, my creative development, original sketch files with creation dates showing I'd done the work months before Derek's presentations, internal presentations, notes from meetings where I'd shown Derek my concepts and he'd approved them, client presentations, calendar entries showing when Derek had presented to clients, follow-up emails showing client approval, signed contracts, proof that deals had closed based on the creative work. I created a comprehensive timeline for each project, showing the clear pattern. Derek assigns project to me, I create the work, Derek presents it as his own. Client signs contract based on Derek's creative vision. 12 major projects over 2 years, estimated total value $400,000 in client billings. Derek's bonuses and promotions had been based directly on that revenue generated by work he hadn't created. I also reached back out to Amanda Torres, the designer who'd left Apex after Derek had stolen from her and retaliated when she'd spoken up. Amanda gave me permission to include her testimony in my documentation. She provided her own files from projects where Derek had taken credit for her work. She also shared something I hadn't known. She'd kept email correspondence with another former Apex designer named Carla Rodriguez, who'd left the agency in 2021, before I'd even started. I contacted Carla through LinkedIn. She confirmed that Derek had done the same thing to her, assigned her to develop concepts for major client pitches, taken credit for her work, blocked her advancement. Carla had eventually quit in frustration. She'd assumed it was just agency culture, that this was how creative work operated. It wasn't until Amanda contacted her years later that she'd understood it was specifically Derek, not the industry as a whole. The pattern extended back further than I'd realized. Derek had been stealing creative work for at least 5 years, possibly longer. I was just the latest victim, but I was the one with the photographic evidence. I compiled all of this into a detailed report, 47 pages, meticulously organized, every claim supported with documentation. But the centerpiece, the thing that made everything else irrefutable, was the screenshot from the Sterling Zoom call. I included it prominently in the report, highlighted the visible signature on my sketch, cross-referenced it with the original file from my archives showing the same sketch, same signature, creation date of August 24th, 2024, 4 months before Derek's pitch to Sterling. The signature proved the sketch was mine. The screenshot proved Derek had it displayed in his office while claiming the work as his own. There was no explaining that away, no collaborative process spin that could make it acceptable. It was theft, plain and simple, documented in 4K resolution. I spent 3 weeks finalizing the report, making sure every detail was accurate, every claim was supported, every timeline was verified. Then I needed to decide who to send it to. I could send it to Patricia Gordon, but Patricia had promoted Derek, had praised his creative work, had increased his authority and compensation based on stolen work. She had a vested interest in believing Derek was who she thought he was. Admitting she'd been wrong about him would mean admitting she'd been fooled for years. I could send it to HR, but HR's primary function was protecting the company from liability, not protecting employees from misconduct. They might bury the complaint to avoid legal exposure. I needed to send it to someone who had a direct stake in knowing the truth, someone who'd feel personally betrayed by Derek's deception. The Sterling Investments team. They'd signed a $300,000 contract based on what they believed was Derek Walsh's creative brilliance. Their partnership with Apex was built on trust in his abilities. If they learned that Derek was a fraud, that the work they'd approved had been stolen from me, they'd have every reason to be furious. And their fury would force Apex to take action. The company couldn't afford to lose a $300,000 client over Derek's misconduct. Public accountability from a major client would make this impossible to bury. I drafted the email on a Sunday evening, revised it multiple times, kept the tone professional and factual, no emotional language, no accusations of character, just documented facts. The email read, "Dear Sterling Investments Marketing Team, my name is Marcus Rivera. I am a senior designer at Apex Creative, and I have been part of the team working on your rebranding project. I am writing to provide you with information I believe you deserve to know regarding the creative work that was presented to you by Derek Walsh in December. The brand concept, visual identity system, and comprehensive campaign strategy presented by Mr. Walsh were developed by me. I have extensive documentation proving this, including original design files with creation timestamps, preliminary sketches, internal presentation materials, and email correspondence. During your implementation planning call on January 8th, I captured a screenshot that shows one of my original signed sketches displayed on Mr. Walsh's office wall while he presented the work to you as his own creative vision. This screenshot, combined with my comprehensive documentation, demonstrates a pattern of intellectual property theft spanning 2 years and multiple client projects valued at approximately $400,000. I am providing this information because your partnership with Apex Creative was established based on trust in Mr. Walsh's claimed creative abilities. You deserve to know the actual source of the work you have contracted for. I have attached a detailed report documenting everything, including the screenshot from your January 8th call, my original design files with timestamps, and a timeline showing the development of work that was later presented as Mr. Walsh's creative vision. I am also copying Apex Creative's CEO and Human Resources Department on this email to ensure complete transparency. I understand this information is difficult and potentially disruptive, but I believe honesty and integrity must take precedence over protecting comfortable fictions. The creative work you approved is solid and strategically sound. It will serve your rebranding goals effectively. The only question is who actually created it. I hope you will review the attached documentation and make whatever decisions you feel are appropriate. Respectfully, Marcus Rivera, Senior Designer, Apex Creative. I attached the 47-page report. I attached the screenshot as a separate high-resolution file for emphasis. I added Patricia Gordon's email to the CC line. I added our HR Director, Donald Park. I added our Chief Operating Officer, Michael Brennan. Complete transparency. Everyone's seeing the same information at the same time. No opportunity for anyone to bury this quietly. I scheduled the email to send Monday morning at 8 a.m., the start of the business week. Maximum impact. Then I spent the weekend in a state of anxious anticipation. Barely ate, couldn't focus on anything. Kept opening my email client to verify the message was still scheduled. Sunday night, I almost canceled it. Almost convinced myself that this was too aggressive, that I should try to handle this internally first. But I thought about Amanda Torres, about Carla Rodriguez, about Jake Morrison, still at Apex, still having his work stolen because he was too scared to speak up. I thought about the next designer Derek would steal from if no one stopped him. I left the email scheduled. Monday morning, February 22nd, 2025, 8 a.m. Mountain. The email sent. I watched it disappear from my outbox and enter the inboxes of 10 people who would all see it simultaneously. Then I waited. 33 minutes. At 8:33, my phone rang. Patricia Gordon. I answered, keeping my voice calm and professional. Marcus. Patricia's voice was controlled but tight, like she was barely containing fury. I need you to join a Zoom call immediately. We need to discuss the email you sent this morning. Of course, I said. Send me the link. The meeting invitation came through. I clicked it. On the call, Patricia Gordon, CEO, Donald Park, HR Director, Michael Brennan, COO, Catherine Moore, our external legal counsel, and Derek Walsh. Derek looked like he'd been punched. His face was pale. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching. His eyes were furious. Patricia spoke first. Her voice was ice-cold professional. Marcus, I have read your email and reviewed your documentation. These are extremely serious allegations. Before we proceed further, I need you to explain exactly what you are claiming. I kept my voice steady. Factual, unemotional. I am claiming that Derek Walsh has systematically stolen creative work that I developed and presented it to clients as his own original work. This has occurred repeatedly over a 2-year period across at least 12 major client projects. I have comprehensive documentation proving every instance. The screenshot from the Sterling call provides photographic evidence that is impossible to dispute. Derek interrupted, his voice loud and angry. This is complete bullshit. Marcus is a disgruntled employee who's bitter about not getting promoted. This is a malicious attempt to sabotage my career because he's jealous of my success. Everything he's claiming is either a complete fabrication or a deliberate misrepresentation of normal collaborative creative work. Patricia cut him off. Derek, let Marcus finish. I continued. The screenshot from the Sterling implementation call shows one of my original preliminary sketches, signed with my name, displayed on Derek's office wall while he was presenting the work to Sterling as his creative vision. That sketch is dated August 24th, 2024. Derek's pitch to Sterling was December 15th. 4 months later. The signature proves the sketch is mine. The screenshot proves Derek had it in his possession while claiming credit for work he didn't create. I shared my screen, pulled up the screenshot, zoomed in to show the sketch pinned to Derek's wall, clearly visible behind him during the Sterling call. This is my preliminary typography study for the Sterling rebrand. You can see my signature in the bottom right corner here. I highlighted it on screen. Then I pulled up the original file from my design archive. Same sketch, same signature. File creation timestamp showing August 24th, 2024. This proves the work was created by me 4 months before Derek's presentation, and it was displayed on his wall while he told Sterling about my creative process and my design approach. The Zoom call was completely silent. Derek started to speak again. His voice was desperate now, the anger giving way to something that sounded like panic. That sketch. Marcus and I collaborated on that project. Of course I have his preliminary work. That's how creative teams function. We share materials. We build on each other's ideas. This is completely standard practice, and Marcus knows it. He's deliberately taking normal collaboration and twisting it into something malicious. I cut him off, politely but firmly. Then let's look at the pattern. I pulled up the comprehensive timeline I'd created. 12 projects, 2 years, each one showing project assigned to me by Derek with email timestamp, my creative development with file creation dates. Derek's presentation to clients with calendar entries. Client contracts signed based on Derek's creative vision. Every single major client win Derek has claimed in the past 2 years follows this exact pattern. Summit Trail, Cascade Coffee, RedLine Fitness, Summit Medical, Sterling Investments, 9 others, all of it the same. Derek assigns the project to me. I develop all creative concepts. Derek presents my work to clients as his own. Clients sign contracts believing Derek created the work. I pulled up specific examples, email chains where Derek had assigned projects, design files showing my development work with clear timestamps, follow-up emails where clients praised Derek's creative vision. The total value of these projects is approximately $400,000 in client billings. Derek's promotions and bonuses have been based directly on this revenue generated by work he didn't create. Catherine Moore, the attorney, spoke up. Her voice was carefully neutral. Marcus, you understand that what you're alleging constitutes intellectual property theft and fraudulent misrepresentation to clients. These are serious legal claims. Do you have evidence beyond the screenshot and file timestamps? Yes, I said. I have testimony from former Apex designers who experienced identical theft. Amanda Torres, who left the agency in 2023 after Derek stole her work and HR dismissed her complaint. Carla Rodriguez, who left in 2021 for the same reason. Both have provided documentation of projects where Derek took credit for their creative work. I pulled up the statements they'd provided, detailed accounts of their experiences, documentation from their time at Apex. This isn't about one project or one misunderstanding. This is a systematic pattern spanning at least 5 years. Derek Walsh has built his entire career at Apex on stolen creative work. Patricia's voice was quiet now. Dangerous. Derek, I need you to respond to these allegations directly and specifically. Did you present work created by Marcus Rivera to clients as your own original creative vision? Silence. Derek's video feed showed him looking away from the camera, not answering. Derek. Patricia's voice was sharp. Answer the question. More silence. Then the creative process is collaborative. I provide strategic direction. The designers execute that direction. When I present work to clients, I'm presenting the agency's capabilities, not taking personal credit. That's not what I asked, Patricia said, her voice cutting. Did you use language like my concept or my creative approach when presenting work that Marcus had developed? Derek hesitated. I may have used that kind of language in presentations. It's standard framing. It doesn't mean I was claiming sole credit. It's just presentation style. It means you lied, Patricia said flatly. You presented other people's work as your own creation. You accepted credit and compensation for that work. You did it repeatedly over multiple years. And now we have a major client who signed a $300,000 contract based on trust and abilities you fraudulently claimed to have.
Donald Park from HR spoke up. We're going to need to conduct a full investigation before making any final determinations. Derek, you're being placed on administrative leave effective immediately, pending the outcome of this investigation. Marcus, we'll need you to make all of your documentation available to our investigative team. Catherine will need your legal guidance on the implications of this situation.
Derek's face went from pale to red. You're suspending me based on accusations from someone who's openly trying to destroy my career? This is insane. I've brought millions of dollars to this agency. I've won awards. I've built our creative reputation. And you're going to throw all of that away because of a grudge from a designer who couldn't handle not getting promoted.
Patricia's voice was ice. We're suspending you because there is photographic evidence of you displaying another designer's signed work while presenting it to a client as your own, because there is documented testimony from multiple former employees describing identical experiences, because our major client relationship is now at risk due to your alleged fraud. This meeting is concluded. You'll receive formal documentation of your suspension within the hour.
She paused. Marcus, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll be in touch regarding the investigation. The call ended. I sat in my apartment, alone, shaking from adrenaline. It was done? I'd exposed Derek. The investigation was happening. There was no going back. Whatever came next. At least I'd told the truth. The investigation took 4 weeks. Apex hired an external firm that specialized in corporate misconduct investigations. They were thorough and professional and took nothing at face value. They interviewed me for over 8 hours across multiple sessions, asked me to walk through every project in my documentation, examined every file, every timestamp, every email chain. They interviewed Derek for hours, pressed him on specific discrepancies, asked him to explain the screenshot, to provide his own creative development materials for the projects he'd claimed credit for. Derek couldn't. He had presentation files, the polished final work I'd created, but he didn't have preliminary sketches, development iterations, the messy creative process that leads to finished work, because he hadn't done that work. I had. The investigators interviewed Amanda Torres, interviewed Carla Rodriguez, found another former designer, James Lynn, who'd left Apex in 2020 and had experienced the same pattern of theft. They interviewed current Apex designers, including Jake Morrison. Jake confirmed that Derek had been taking credit for his work on smaller projects, that everyone at the agency knew it was happening, but no one felt safe speaking up. The investigators examined Derek's computer files, found my design files saved to his drives with altered metadata, trying to make it look like he'd created them, found emails where he'd forwarded my work to himself and then deleted my attribution. They found a pattern of Derek systematically stealing credit from multiple designers over a 6-year period, at least 5 people, dozens of projects, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent credit.
The Sterling Investments team was livid when they learned the details.
Christina Valdez, their CMO, sent a scathing email to Patricia Gordon, said they felt deceived and betrayed, that their partnership with Apex had been predicated on trust in Derek Walsh's creative abilities, that learning he was a fraud fundamentally damaged that trust. They didn't cancel the contract, my work was solid, and they still needed the rebrand, but they demanded significant concessions, reduced fees, extended timeline, direct approval authority over all creative work, and they insisted that I be assigned as the lead creative on their account. Not Derek, me. They also made it clear that their continued partnership with Apex was contingent on how the agency handled Derek's misconduct. Apex agreed to everything. On March 19th, 2025, Patricia Gordon called me into a Zoom meeting. Marcus, the investigation is complete. The findings comprehensively support your allegations. Derek Walsh engaged in systematic intellectual property theft, fraudulent misrepresentation to clients, and violation of multiple company policies over a period of at least 6 years. She paused, and I could see the weight of what she was about to say. He has been terminated for cause, effective immediately. No severance package. We are also pursuing legal action to recover bonuses and compensation he received based on fraudulent claims of creative work. I nodded, feeling a wave of vindication wash over me. Patricia continued, and her voice softened slightly. We owe you an apology, Marcus. What Derek did should never have been allowed to happen. His behavior was enabled by inadequate oversight, insufficient crediting systems, and a culture that didn't properly value individual creative contributions. That failure is on leadership. It's on me. She took a breath. We're implementing comprehensive new policies to prevent this from ever happening again. Mandatory documentation of all creative contributions, transparent crediting systems where every designer's work is formally acknowledged, independent review of all major client presentations, and structural changes to ensure creative directors can't operate without accountability. We'd also like to offer you the position of Associate Creative Director, the role you should have been given 2 years ago. Significant salary increase, equity stake in the agency, and full creative authority over your projects. You'll never again be in a position where someone else can take credit for your work. I accepted. Over the following months, I learned more details about Derek's complete professional collapse. He tried to find another position in Denver's creative industry, but word had spread. Everyone knew what he'd done. The screenshot had circulated. The story was everywhere. No reputable agency would hire him. His reputation was destroyed. He tried freelancing, set up a website, started reaching out to potential clients. But his portfolio was full of work he hadn't actually created. When potential clients asked him to walk through his creative process or develop concepts in real time during pitches, he struggled. He didn't have the skills he'd claimed to have. His entire career had been built on stolen work. Without other people's creativity to steal, he had nothing. His LinkedIn profile, which had once been full of congratulatory messages and job opportunities, went quiet. Then it disappeared entirely. I heard through industry contacts that Derek had moved out of Colorado, gone to a different state, was working in a completely different field. His career in creative work was finished. The designers he'd stolen from over the years, Amanda, Carla, James, Jake, me, all felt a sense of vindication. Several reached out personally to thank me for having the courage to expose him. Amanda told me that watching Derek finally face real consequences helped her heal from the experience. That for years she'd felt gaslit and crazy, like maybe she'd been wrong about what happened, like maybe it really had been her fault. Seeing the investigation prove that Derek had been systematically stealing from multiple people validated her experience, proved she hadn't been imagining it, that the theft had been real, and now there was irrefutable evidence. For me, the experience fundamentally changed how I think about creative work, credit, and speaking up. I'd spent 2 years believing that staying quiet was the professional thing to do, that making waves would hurt my career more than enduring the theft, that this was just how agencies operated and I needed to accept it. But silence had only enabled Derek to continue to hurt more people, to build a career on lies while destroying other people's opportunities. Speaking up had been terrifying. It could have backfired catastrophically. I could have been labeled a troublemaker, could have been fired instead of promoted. But it had been the right thing to do. Not just for me, for Amanda and Carla and James and Jake, for every designer who'd had their work stolen, for the integrity of creative work itself. I learned that documentation is power, that you can't fight theft with just your word against someone else's. You need evidence, timestamps, original files, email trails, and sometimes you need a moment of pure carelessness from the person who wronged you. A Zoom call where they forget to check their background, a camera angle that shifts for just a few seconds, a signed sketch visible in the corner of a frame. That screenshot was the key that unlocked everything. It was the undeniable proof that made all my other documentation irrefutable. I've been at Apex Creative for nearly 2 years now as Associate Creative Director. The agency culture has changed dramatically. We have transparent crediting systems where every designer's contributions are formally documented and acknowledged in client presentations. We have independent oversight of creative work to ensure directors can't operate without accountability. We have anonymous reporting channels for anyone who feels their work is being misattributed. I mentor younger designers now. Tell them to keep meticulous records of their work, to speak up when something doesn't feel right, to understand that creative theft is real and serious and worth fighting against. Some of them ask if I regret how publicly I exposed Derek. If I wish I'd handled it more quietly or diplomatically. I tell them no. Derek's career ended because he was exposed publicly, with photographic evidence that clients and leadership couldn't ignore, because the truth became impossible to hide or minimize. If I'd handled it quietly through internal channels, he might have been allowed to resign gracefully, might have moved to another agency and continued stealing from other designers, might have hurt dozens more people. Public accountability mattered, evidence mattered, refusing to stay silent mattered. Creative work is deeply personal. It's not just labor or technical execution. It's ideas and vision and hours of thought that come from somewhere inside you. When you develop a concept, you're putting a piece of yourself into it. When someone steals that work and claims it as their own, they're not just taking credit, they're taking a piece of your identity. They're erasing your contribution and your value. That's worth fighting for. That's worth the risk of speaking up. Derek Walsh thought he was untouchable, thought he was too smart, too well-positioned, too protected by his success to ever face consequences. He was wrong. 6 years of theft, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent credit, multiple promotions and bonuses built on lies, a reputation as a creative genius built entirely on other people's work. All of it destroyed by a 2-second screenshot showing a sketch with my signature visible on his wall. I still have that screenshot saved. I look at it sometimes and think about how easily I could have missed it. If I hadn't happened to glance at Derek's video feed at that exact moment when he stood up, if the camera angle hadn't shifted just right, if I hadn't thought to take a screenshot in those brief seconds before he sat back down. Timing matters. Attention matters. Sometimes justice comes down to being in the right place at the right moment with your finger ready. I think about what would have happened if I'd never gotten that screenshot, if I just had my file timestamps and email chains and testimony from other designers. Would it have been enough? Would anyone have believed me? Maybe, but the screenshot made it irrefutable. It was the evidence that couldn't be explained away or recontextualized. It was proof that everyone could see and understand immediately. Looking back, that screenshot changed everything. Not just because it exposed Derek's theft, but because it reminded me that sometimes the evidence you need is right in front of you. You just have to be paying attention. Creative work deserves protection. The people who create it deserve recognition and credit, and those who steal it deserve to face real consequences. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had your work stolen, your contributions ignored, or your creativity claimed by someone else, you're not alone. These experiences are more common than they should be, but they don't have to be accepted as normal. Documentation matters, speaking up matters, holding people accountable matters, and sometimes justice arrives in the most unexpected form: a camera angle, a visible signature, 2 seconds that change everything.
Subscribe for daily stories of people who refuse to stay silent, who documented everything, and who proved that integrity and truth matter more than position and power. Stories where patience pays off, where evidence speaks louder than lies, and where creative work gets the protection and credit it deserves.
News story every day. The quiet reckoning.